Hi, it's me, Termo, Motivation and Beard. Welcome to this new video. First of all, I wanted to thank you because there have been a lot of shares and fortunately some people have already started contacting me. I began to help and share my story personally with them, along with their families, and begin to follow them in the journey they are undertaking. Specifically, along with a young man who will be featured in future videos, we spoke with a man who went through a situation very similar to mine, and now, after 2 years from his accident, has to choose whether or not to amputate. As I mentioned in a Facebook post today, amputating is never easy, but sometimes it's the only choice you have. A message I have shared often and would like to keep clear is that I don't try to convince people to amputate limbs, but I rather try to convince them that the moment it happens, their life will be fine anyways. If you have any question specifically about my condition, or if you have any question about what I've been through, if you want clarifications, or have any kind of question in these regards, write in the comments so that I can read and answer in the next videos. Let's start today's video where we left off last time, which was at the beginning of the recovery and the treatments that followed over the months after, the discovery of the infection and the surgical removal of the infected parts. The surgical removal had taken from just above the shin to behind on the Achilles tendon. I no longer had any sensation. I was trying to move my foot but without success, and because of this nerve disconnect, the foot had started to go into equinus. Basically, not having the mobility of the ankle and the nerve response, the foot was dropping more and more. And so this would lead to, by the time I started walking, the rubbing of my toes on the ground. So the doctor suggested that we could have put nails inside the ankle already. But before we did that, he decided to try to put some sort of brace. And if the brace would have worked, then we would have gotten back the ankle to 90 degrees angle, so that I would have been able to do a smooth walk again. As I said in one of the initial videos, the surgery in total came to be 44, and the total number in the first period we're talking about is around 30 at most, and they were surgical cleanings. One of the two doctors who was supporting the one that operated me in the beginning, who continued to follow me through this healing process of mine, had suggested an operation where I would have had some processed skin removed from a part of my body, which could have been back or my legs, and then applied where the infected part was removed to help with the regeneration. But that was to happen only after there was actually tissue recovery, and so I had to intensify the hyperbaric chamber therapy. In fact, in the first period, I started doing one session in the morning and one session in the afternoon. The hyperbaric chamber sessions are about a couple of hours, where you intermittently breathe pure oxygen, which helps tissues regeneration. In the first period, for me it was very difficult, also because I didn't have much control over myself. I was in a lot of pain and I was on a lot of medications. It was difficult to manage everything. I had a lot of difficulties, and probably the people who followed me at the hyperbaric center in Ravenna had a lot of difficulties too, because I was not easy to manage. When the hyperbaric chamber sessions began to bear its fruit, the doctor who had suggested the surgical operation to cover the parts that were regenerating decided it was time to implement this plan. So they did this surgery. I must say that it was painful, yes, but more than painful, it was annoying, because they took the skin from the thighs and applied it in the open wound. There was very much discomfort in the thighs because they removed the first layer of skin, and this is a very annoying thing. Every time I put my legs down, there was a burning sensation at first and then itching, and I couldn't touch them obviously. At the same time, as a hyperbaric chamber therapist that led me to have the possibility to do this operation, I started the rehab with therapists inside the hospital. I will never forget the first day that I got out of my bed for the first time and sat up. I still remember that I had one of those Motorola phones that opened, and I called my mother and my father and told them that I was finally able to sit up and get out of bed. If I'm not mistaken, this happened about a month or so after my hospitalization. My sister was with me in that very moment, and I remember the joy was really great, and I started crying. That was only the beginning. Then the first steps began, and I will never ever forget the first step. Because it was finally the moment when I was getting back on my feet. When, after everything I'd been through, I was finally making progress in my condition. I want to take a minute just to tell you what my first step was like. Because I experienced it in a way, and my mother did it in a completely another. I was very happy, because I was clearly taking my first step towards progress and improvement, and I was very excited. I remember taking the first step with my right leg and the second step with my left leg, and having taken the push, I was going forward to take the third step. But when I put my left foot on the ground, a lot of blood began to come out, probably because it had broken some stitches. I didn't notice anything at all, but I remember that my mother stopped me immediately and said, "Stop, don't move." And I said, "What is it?" And she said, "You're making everything dirty." I didn't understand what she was talking about, so I looked down and saw a huge puddle of blood, and I started to feel dizzy because I realized that something was wrong. So they had to put me back in bed, and from there I waited a while before walking again. Anyways, back to the post-surgery period, it was definitely very uncomfortable. But theoretically, it was starting to give the first results. The problem was that some small infections started to appear on top of the part that had been generated. And this showed that actually the infections had not been all removed, even though visually and under examinations and tests there were no more. So that led the idea that there were infections within the bone, and with another doctor we later decided to go on a healing path that included antibiotics, nails, but that will be part of future videos. All of these infections that continued to form were a source of great pain for me, so the pain therapy I had was very strong therapy. I remember having a spinal catheter that was releasing morphine all the time, plus I had doses of morphine daily. During the day I also remember that despite the morphine, the pain was a lot, and a little bit I could even manage with food. I also have to thank my father, because my father was the one who brought me salt, pepper and oil next to my bed, and every time I had lunch or dinner I could season things as I wanted. And I had so much more. Maybe he will bring me some cured meat, or maybe one night we will eat a pizza. It helped a lot. The serenity that my father or my mother brought me when they did these things was extremely important, because it brought me some sort of normality feeling, even if my condition was definitely not normal. Unfortunately, the pain therapy I had was very strong. The pain was always increasing, but it wasn't just through all the previous operation, because in that period I had the vac machine, which I spoke about in the previous video. And those medications were very painful. Afterwards, I had the vac machine only in small points, and then I removed it completely since we had inserted the skin. Despite this, I still had the surgical cleaning interventions to clean all these areas, and these surgeries were very painful. So between what I took during these operations, even though sometimes I did it without and sometimes they gave me a supplement, I really had a strong painkiller routine. All that had led me to have a very strong addiction to morphine. The doctors noticed this and tried to treat this addiction. They did so in a way that I didn't appreciate very much, which was that they radically changed the pain management by completely removing morphine overnight. It was hell for me. It was total panic, because what I was taking was no longer giving me that effect. I want you to understand what it feels like when you take morphine. It's some sort of excitement that grows in your chest along with a heat feeling. Try to imagine the moment when you are most excited. when you feel that frenzy in your chest that you would like to explode or do anything that comes to mind. You have to vent all the energy imaginable, but concentrated in the chest with a growing heat. The heat move up from my chest to my neck and then get to the brain. The moment it reached my brain, I entered in a state of pure ecstasy, pure pleasure and enjoyment. Nothing existed anymore. I only felt pleasure. I could no longer see, speak, or hear. It was only and exclusively pleasure. So the moment they changed my medication and I no longer felt this kind of well-being, my mind and body were devastated. I started to feel pain that I didn't have in parts of my body where there was absolutely nothing. Because my body was trying to create the need to receive more morphine. It was a very long 2 weeks, where at one point I even hit my head against the bars of my bed. Eventually, fortunately, I was able to get out of this addiction and get used to the new drugs. One thing I didn't talk about in the previous videos, but which has always been with me from the beginning until the present moment of my story, were the external irons, which you have may seen already in some photograph, and that you can now see here on my left. These needles were used to hold the leg together and clearly went through the flesh and reached the bone. Finally, after a lot of therapy, a lot of surgeries, and a lot of patience on my part, and of course, above all, on my family members who were around me and who had turned their lives upside down to assist me, on December 13, 2010, I left the hospital for the first time. I remember that day it began to snow. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this final part of the first period, but that only started everything else. Because with the next videos, we will see all the other surgeries I did and what happened a few months later. But, as I said before, I will talk about that in the next videos. I hope that people who are watching this content can find the motivations to move forward, and can understand that there are other people like them who are experiencing or have experienced these moments, these difficulties and this pain. I hope they can find the strength to move forward and possibly reach me with a message. Contact me through social networks, of which you will find links in the description of this video. If you liked the video, smash the like button, and if you're not subscribed yet, I invite you to do it now and to activate the bell in order to receive notifications and do not miss any of my content. In addition to that, if you have any question about my condition, my history, my current life and how to live with a prosthetic leg, as I said at the beginning, do not be shy and contact me through the comments of this video or through other socials. With that being said, all that remains to me is to say goodbye. See you in the next video. This party's out of control.